This just shook the entire auto industry. Volkswagen's CEO has openly talked about a $10,000 pickup. And the moment those words hit the air, the car market went into full panic mode. We're talking about the Volkswagen Saveiro, a compact pickup that has quietly dominated overseas markets, now suddenly thrust into the global spotlight after executives hinted that ultra-affordable vehicles are the future, not premium EVs. Dealers are nervous, legacy automakers are sweating, and analysts are scrambling because a real, functional pickup at this price point completely breaks the rules of today's inflated car market. Here's why this is explosive. The Volkswagen Saveiro isn't some plastic concept or fantasy render. It's a real, working pickup with a bed, proven reliability, and a price that undercuts almost everything on the road. While competitors are pushing $40,000 entry-level trucks, Volkswagen's leadership is basically saying the quiet part out loud. Consumers are done being overcharged. That single statement threatens the entire profit structure of the industry, because once buyers realize a global automaker can build a pickup for $10K, the pricing game collapses fast. And the timing couldn't be worse for rivals. Interest rates are crushing buyers, truck sales are slowing, and then Volkswagen steps in with the Saveiro narrative. Simple, affordable, no nonsense. Investors hear that and panic, because if this strategy scales or expands into new markets, it forces every other brand to explain why their cheapest trucks cost 3 to 4 times more. This isn't just about one pickup, it's about Volkswagen exposing how bloated the modern car market has become. And as more details leak out, the pressure is only building, because the next question everyone is asking is whether this 10K pickup is just the beginning of a much bigger shift that could completely rewrite how cars are priced, sold, and even designed moving forward, as consumers start to realize they may have been paying far more than necessary for years. And once that realization spreads, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle, because suddenly affordability becomes the weapon that changes everything and forces automakers to react in ways they never planned for as the market braces for what comes next. Because once Volkswagen cracked that door open, it exposed something even more uncomfortable. The technology and manufacturing to build affordable vehicles never disappeared. It was simply buried under layers of upselling, luxury trims, and artificial scarcity. The Saveiro proves that if a company chooses volume over massive margins, the math still works, and that idea terrifies executives who've spent the last decade training buyers to accept outrageous prices as normal. Suddenly, a 10K pickup isn't just a product, it's a threat to an entire business model. What really sent shockwaves through the industry was the CEO's tone. This wasn't hype, and it wasn't defensive. It was confident, almost challenging. Volkswagen made it clear they see demand shifting away from bloated trucks packed with screens and subscriptions towards simple machines that get the job done. The Saveiro fits that philosophy perfectly. Compact, efficient, easy to maintain, and built for real work instead of parking lot status symbols. That message lands like a hammer when truck buyers are already frustrated and feeling priced out. And here's where the panic deepens. If Volkswagen can sell a pickup this cheap in global markets, the only thing stopping it elsewhere is strategy, not capability. Competitors know it. Regulators know it. Dealers know it. The moment Volkswagen decides to adapt the Saveiro for new regions, it forces every other automaker into a corner. Either slash prices, strip features, or watch budget-conscious buyers walk away in droves. That kind of pressure doesn't just hurt sales, it destroys long-term planning. Even more telling is how quiet everyone else has suddenly gone. No bold announcements, no counter statements, just silence. That's usually the sound of companies scrambling behind closed doors, recalculating what happens if affordability becomes the new battlefield. Because once consumers see a major brand openly acknowledge that a truck doesn't need to cost $50,000 to be profitable, it changes expectations permanently, and expectations are far harder to control than pricing, especially when a vehicle like the Volkswagen Saveiro keeps proving that the old excuses no longer hold up. And the real question now isn't whether the market will change, but how fast that change is about to hit, and who will be left standing when it does. As the pressure continues to build, and the industry realizes this moment may have already crossed the point of no return. So as the noise grows louder and the pressure keeps mounting, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. The Volkswagen Saveiro has already done its damage without even changing markets. It's shifted expectations, challenged assumptions, and made affordability a mainstream conversation again. And as long as that conversation continues, the industry stays on edge, because the next move could arrive at any moment, and when it does, it won't just affect pricing. It will challenge everything automakers thought they knew about what consumers were willing to accept as the tension keeps keeps building, and the story continues to unfold without slowing down. And what makes this even harder for the industry to manage is that this shift didn't come from a startup or a fringe brand. It came from Volkswagen, a legacy giant with global scale, deep supply chains, and decades of manufacturing experience. When a company like that hints at a 10K pickup, it carries weight. The Saveiro isn't theoretical, it's already proven itself in real markets, which strips away the usual excuses before they can even be deployed. This is why internal panic is reportedly growing. Product planners are now forced to reevaluate vehicles that were designed around higher price points from day one. You can't easily cheapify a truck that was engineered to justify $60,000 trims. That realization hurts because it exposes how far designs have drifted from actual consumer needs. The Saveiro, by contrast, starts with purpose and builds upward only where necessary. There's also a geopolitical angle quietly forming. Governments pushing affordability, local manufacturing, and economic access may begin pointing to examples like the Saveiro when questioning why entry-level vehicles are disappearing. That kind of scrutiny creates another headache for automakers already under pressure, and Volkswagen suddenly finds itself holding a powerful reference point whether it intended to or not. Meanwhile, buyers are becoming more patient, and that's dangerous for the market. When consumers believe prices might come down, they stop buying, they wait, and waiting freezes sales faster than any recession. The idea of a 10K pickup makes every overpriced truck feel temporary, and that hesitation alone can send shockwaves through quarterly earnings. So even without a formal announcement, Volkswagen has effectively destabilized the narrative. The Saveiro looms over every showroom floor like an unspoken comparison, a reminder that alternatives exist, and as long as that reminder sticks, the industry can't reset expectations easily, because once buyers see a crack in the system, they start looking for more, and the momentum keeps growing, the pressure keeps intensifying, and this story keeps unfolding with no clear resolution in sight as everything hangs on what happens next. And right now, that uncertainty is the most powerful force in the market. No one knows if Volkswagen will pull the trigger, but everyone knows they can. The Saveiro has become a shadow hanging over future product launches because every new truck announcement now invites instant comparison. Bigger screens, more horsepower, higher prices. None of it lands the same anymore when buyers are aware that a 10K alternative exists somewhere in the world. What's even more disruptive is how this challenges the definition of progress. For years, automakers equated advancement with complexity, but the Saveiro reframes progress as accessibility. That's a dangerous narrative shift because it appeals to logic instead of aspiration. When buyers start valuing usefulness over flash, marketing loses its strongest weapon, and that's a nightmare scenario for brands built on image. Volkswagen's silence continues to amplify the effect. No denials, no clarifications, just enough confirmation to keep the conversation alive. That restraint suggests confidence, and confidence signals leverage. The Saveiro doesn't need a launch date to apply pressure, it already lives rent-free in the industry's headspace. And let's be clear, this isn't about nostalgia. This isn't a throwback fantasy. It's a modern example of restraint in an era of excess. The Saveiro represents what happens when a manufacturer decides not to chase every possible upsell, and instead focuses on solving a basic problem, transportation that people can afford. That alone makes it revolutionary. As the months go on, the tension only compounds. Buyers wait, analysts speculate, competitors stall, all while Volkswagen holds a card that could reset pricing across multiple segments. Whether they play it tomorrow or years from now almost doesn't matter anymore, because the idea is already active, already spreading, already shaping expectations, and as long as those expectations keep shifting, the industry remains locked in a state of quiet panic, bracing for the moment when this possibility turns into reality, and the story pushes forward without slowing down. So now all eyes stay locked on Volkswagen. The Saveiro is no longer just an overseas compact truck, it's a pressure point. Every earnings call, every future product reveal will be measured against this one uncomfortable fact, because once consumers accept that a reliable pickup can exist at $10,000, the entire market has to respond, and the longer that response takes, the louder the panic becomes as the conversation keeps growing, expectations keep shifting, and the possibility that this changes everything refuses to go away. And here's where things get even more interesting, because the Saveiro isn't alone in Volkswagen's global lineup. It represents a mindset the company has quietly embraced in emerging markets: build tough, affordable vehicles that people can actually buy without debt traps. The moment that philosophy collides with high-priced Western markets, it exposes just how distorted pricing has become. That collision is what everyone is afraid of, because once it happens, there's no clean way to contain it. Dealers feel the tension too. Their entire revenue structure is built around high-ticket vehicles, long financing terms, and expensive add-ons. A 10K pickup like the Volkswagen Saveiro flips that upside down. Fewer upsells, faster transactions, smaller commissions. Multiply that across a network, and suddenly resistance makes sense. This isn't just manufacturers panicking, it's the entire ecosystem realizing that affordability threatens the way they've operated for years. And consumers are watching closely. Every hint, every quote from Volkswagen leadership gets dissected, because buyers are desperate for relief. Truck buyers especially feel burned. Prices climbed, sizes exploded, and usefulness often took a back seat. The Saveiro feels like a reset button, a reminder of when trucks were tools first and status symbols second, and that emotional connection is powerful. What's undeniable now is that Volkswagen has shifted the conversation without even launching a new product. They've exposed the gap between what vehicles cost to build and what buyers are asked to pay. Once that gap becomes common knowledge, trust erodes fast, and trust is the foundation of any brand. Competitors aren't just worried about losing sales, they're worried about losing credibility, and as this pressure continues to build, the Saveiro's name keeps resurfacing in discussions about the future of mobility, affordability, and fairness in pricing. Whether Volkswagen expands it or not, the idea is already out there, and ideas are harder to stop than vehicles. Because now the market isn't just waiting for the next model announcement, it's waiting to see who blinks first, who adapts, and who clings to a model that may no longer survive as buyers grow more vocal, more informed, and less willing to accept business as usual, while the tension keeps rising and the story keeps unfolding. And the longer this drags on, the clearer it becomes that this isn't a rumor-driven panic, it's a structural fear. Automakers know once affordability proves profitable again, the excuse for inflated pricing evaporates overnight. The Volkswagen Saveiro stands as evidence that efficiency, scale, and smart design can still win, and that's uncomfortable for an industry addicted to premium trims and endless add-ons. What's especially telling is how younger buyers are reacting. This generation isn't chasing oversized trucks or luxury badges the same way. They want value, durability, and freedom from endless payments. A 10K pickup speaks directly to that mindset, and Volkswagen understands that future loyalty is built now, not later. That's another layer of pressure competitors can't ignore, because losing younger buyers means losing the next decade of relevance. Even analysts are starting to shift their tone. Instead of dismissing ultra-affordable vehicles as niche, they're asking what happens if demand flips faster than expected? What happens if volume beats margins? What happens if simplicity becomes the selling point again? Those questions all trace back to the Saveiro, and none of them have comfortable answers for companies built around high-priced trucks. And let's not forget the ripple effect beyond pickups. If Volkswagen proves this model works, it doesn't stop at one vehicle. Affordable sedans, compact SUVs, even work vans could follow the same philosophy. That's why this moment feels bigger than a single truck. It hints at a lineup strategy that could reshape entire segments and force competitors into defensive positions they're not prepared for. Because once that point of no return is crossed, the dominoes fall fast. Consumers start asking dangerous questions. Why does a mid-sized truck cost as much as a luxury sedan? Why are basic features locked behind trim levels? And why has affordable been erased from the conversation entirely? The Volkswagen Saveiro drags those questions into the spotlight, and suddenly the industry can't hide behind buzzwords anymore. When a global giant openly proves simplicity still sells, the illusion starts cracking. What makes this even more unsettling is how perfectly the Saveiro aligns with real-world needs. Small businesses, contractors, first-time buyers, they don't want rolling tech showcases, they want durability and a payment that doesn't wreck their finances. Volkswagen knows this, and that's why the CEO's comments feel less like a tease and more like a warning shot. If buyers respond the way many expect, demand for oversized, overpriced trucks could dry up faster than anyone predicted. Behind the scenes, suppliers are already feeling it. Parts manufacturers manufacturers depend on high-margin vehicles loaded with electronics, but a stripped-down, affordable pickup flips that equation. Fewer complex components mean lower costs, simpler repairs, and less dependency on proprietary systems. That's another layer of disruption no one's talking about publicly, because it exposes how much of today's pricing is driven by complexity rather than necessity, and the Saveiro cuts straight through that. And then there's the psychological impact. Once buyers realize a $10K pickup from Volkswagen exists, even if it's not immediately available everywhere, it plants a seed. Every $45,000 window sticker starts looking questionable. Every dealer markup feels more insulting. That kind of mindset shift doesn't reverse easily, and automakers know it. They can delay, distract, or deny, but they can't unring that bell, especially when Volkswagen keeps reinforcing the idea that affordability isn't outdated. It's strategic. So now the industry sits in this uneasy pause, watching Volkswagen's next move closely. Will the Saveiro remain a regional secret, or will it become the blueprint for a new generation of vehicles that forces prices back down to reality? Because if Volkswagen commits fully to this path, it doesn't just disrupt competitors, it rewires consumer expectations entirely. And once that happens, the race isn't about who builds the biggest truck anymore. It's about who can survive when buyers finally demand value again. And the pressure keeps rising with every headline, every leaked comment, and every reminder that the rules of the car market may already be changing right in front of everyone's eyes. And that's exactly why this story refuses to die down. Every day, the Volkswagen Saveiro stays in the conversation. It chips away at the industry's carefully crafted pricing narrative. Automakers spent years convincing buyers that higher prices were inevitable. Materials, regulations, technology. But the existence of a $10K pickup from a major brand quietly dismantles that argument. If Volkswagen can do it, then the problem isn't feasibility, it's priorities. What really fuels the tension is how fast this idea spreads online. Forums, comment sections, and social media are flooded with the same reaction. Why can't we have this? That question alone is dangerous. It forces automakers to justify decisions they'd rather keep internal, and it puts pressure on governments and regulators to explain why affordable vehicles are often locked out of certain markets. The Saveiro becomes more than a truck. It becomes proof that affordability is a choice. Volkswagen's leadership understands this moment perfectly. They're not rushing announcements, and they're not walking anything back. That silence is strategic. Let the market talk. Let competitors squirm. Let consumers connect the dots on their own. Because the longer this drags on, the more powerful the message becomes. The era of there is no alternative might be ending, and the Saveiro is the symbol of that shift. Meanwhile, rival brands are trapped. If they lower prices, margins collapse. If they don't, they look greedy and out of touch. That's a lose-lose scenario created by one simple idea, a pickup that focuses on function instead of flash. It's a reminder that innovation doesn't always mean adding more. Sometimes it means stripping things away, and that's a lesson the industry forgot. And beneath all of this noise is the one truth no automaker wants to say out loud. Once consumers feel empowered, control slips away fast. The Volkswagen Saveiro has given buyers a reference point, and reference points are dangerous because they anchor expectations. Suddenly, a base model that still costs tens of thousands looks less like progress and more like exploitation. This is why internal strategy meetings across the industry are reportedly shifting tone. It's no longer about how to justify higher prices. It's about how to defend them. That's a losing posture. Defense implies weakness, and the Saveiro has forced that weakness into the open. You can't unshow people what affordability looks like once they've seen it from a global brand with credibility. Another layer that's quietly alarming competitors is scalability. Volkswagen doesn't need to reinvent its factories to make this work. The infrastructure already exists. Platforms, suppliers, logistics. This isn't a moonshot. That's why the threat feels real, not hypothetical. If the company decides to adapt the Saveiro or its philosophy more broadly, it can move faster than most rivals can react. And consumers are starting to connect the dots. They're realizing that many of the features driving up costs aren't mandatory. They're optional, sometimes unwanted. The Saveiro strips the conversation back to basics. Engine, bed, reliability. That simplicity resonates in a way glossy ads can't replicate, especially when wallets are stretched thin. So the tension keeps climbing. Every month without clarity adds fuel to speculation. Every interview interview, every earnings call gets dissected for hints, because somewhere between possibility and execution sits the moment that changes everything, and the industry knows it's coming even if it doesn't know when, and until that moment arrives, the Volkswagen Saveiro remains the symbol of a question no one wants to answer, but everyone is forced to confront as the pressure continues to build and the story keeps moving forward. And now, we reach the point where the Volkswagen Saveiro isn't just a vehicle, it's a disruptor, a symbol, and a warning all at once. The 10K pickup has done something far bigger than any marketing campaign could. It exposed the fragility of an industry that's relied for years on inflated expectations, layered options, and artificially high price tags. It's forced buyers, analysts, and competitors to confront a reality they've been avoiding. Affordability is possible, and someone is willing to prove it. For buyers, the impact is immediate. No longer do they need to accept the standard 40K plus trucks as the only option. Suddenly, they have a benchmark for value, and that changes the way they shop. Conversations in forums and social media aren't just about features anymore. They're about fairness, access, and efficiency. The Saveiro has redefined what a truck can be in people's minds, and once that mental shift occurs, it's almost impossible to reverse. As the story continues to unfold, the Saveiro forces a fundamental question. How long can the industry cling to inflated pricing when the proof of affordability is sitting right there? The longer the delay, the more intense the scrutiny, the more vocal the buyers, and the greater the pressure on every competitor to respond. And once that response begins, it won't just be about pricing, it will be about strategy, identity, and the willingness of companies to admit that some of their assumptions about what buyers need have been wrong all along. In the end, the Volkswagen Saveiro isn't just a pickup, it's a challenge, a 10K benchmark that dares the rest of the automotive world to rethink, recalibrate, and react. It exposes weaknesses, shifts expectations, and forces change without even having to roll off the assembly line globally. And as long as that conversation continues, as long as the pressure builds, and as long as buyers remain aware of the alternative, the car market will never feel quite the same again. The Saveiro has lit the spark, and the question now isn't whether it will make waves. It's how big those waves will crash across the industry as it braces for what comes next.